Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident expert to unpack something that's, well, it's probably going to change how you look at your entire day.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, the research we're looking at today it's definitely a massive reality check.
Oh, completely. Because, we usually measure our lives in these big sprawling eras, right? Like the college years or the starter job years.
Right, the family years, all of that.
Exactly. And when you're in the middle of one of those phases, it feels like it's going to last forever. But the source material hits us with this raw math right up front, and the illusion just shatters.
It really does. It strips away all that comfortable vagueness we rely on.
Because the average person only lives about 30,000 days total.
Yeah.
That's the whole run.
Yeah, 30,000. It sounds like a lot until you actually break it down.
I know. If you're 25 years old right now listening to this, you've already burned through 9,000 of them.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
But confronting that finite number forces a completely different perspective.
It really does.
Yeah.
And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the actual science of how time works in our brains, right?
Yeah.
We're pulling from neuroscience, behavioral psychology, and sociology to find practical ways to stop wasting it.
Exactly. We're bypassing that generic, wake up at 5 a.m. advice and focusing on designing your life using your own metrics.
And as I was prepping for this, I came up with this analogy for the 30,000 days. I keep picturing life like an hourglass, but with a twist.
Okay, I love a good analogy. What's the twist?
So the bottom half of the hourglass is clear glass. You can look down and see exactly how many grains of sand, how many days you've already burned through.
Right, you know exactly what's down there.
Exactly. But the top half of the hourglass, the part holding your future, it's completely covered. It's opaque.
Oh, wow.
Right? You have zero idea how much sand is actually left up there. It could be full or it could be completely running out.
That instantly changes how you view a word like someday. Saying someday assumes the top of that hourglass is just packed with sand.
Totally. And the most urgent thing we need to figure out is why that sand seems to fall faster the older we get. Everyone feels this, right?
Oh, 100%. It's a universal complaint.
Remember when you were 10 and a single summer break felt like this massive, endless epoch? You could live a whole lifetime between June and September.
Right. And now
as an adult, I literally blink on Memorial Day and suddenly I'm buying Halloween candy. It's insane.
Well, the crazy thing is, this acceleration isn't just nostalgia playing tricks on you. It's actual biology.
Wait, really? It's a physical thing in the brain.
Yeah. Neuroscientists call it the mechanism of time blindness. Basically, your brain doesn't track time with an internal ticking clock. It tracks time by measuring how many novel new experiences it's processing.
Oh, so it's encoding memories.
Exactly. It measures time by the volume of new data it writes down. So when we're kids, literally everything is a novel experience.
That makes so much sense. Like you're navigating new schools, figuring out social dynamics, having your first crush.
Right. Your brain is running the video camera continuously to capture all this brand new data. It has to pay extreme attention to keep you safe and help you learn how the world works.
So the recording is super dense.
Super dense. And later, when you look back, the sheer density of those memories translates into a feeling of vast elapsed time.
But then you contrast that with your average Tuesday as an adult.
Exactly. What does your Tuesday look like?
Well, it's the exact same commute, the same podcast, sitting at the same desk, doing the same tasks.
And then coming home to watch the same streaming show.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because your brain has processed this exact Tuesday 1,000 times, it defaults to energy efficiency. The brain uses a massive amount of calories, so it's always looking to save power.
So it just goes, I know how this story ends. I don't need to record this.
Spot on. It switches to autopilot. And when your brain stops recording new moments, those days literally vanish from your perception.
Wow. So time accelerates.
Yeah.
Because your memory of that period is effectively just a blank tape.
Yes. So the fix for time blindness is to force the brain to turn the camera back on. You have to inject newness.
Like taking a different route to work.
Exactly. Talk to a stranger or commit to learning one completely weird, unrelated thing every month. More new experiences literally equal more life.
Okay, I love that. But I have to push back playfully here because I've spent the last 3 years perfecting my morning routine specifically to reduce decision fatigue.
Right, the fully optimized morning.
Yeah, and now it sounds like my perfectly friction-free morning routine is actually making my life flash before my eyes. Am I supposed to introduce chaos every morning just to feel alive?
No, that's a crucial distinction the research makes. We have to separate mindless autopilot from intentional habits.
Okay, what's the difference?
Mindless autopilot is when you're totally disengaged. Like you're scrolling your phone while drinking your coffee, you're not tasting it, you're not registering your surroundings, you're mentally absent.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all are. But intentional habits, like your morning routine, are structured behaviors designed to handle mundane tasks efficiently.
So they free up mental bandwidth.
Exactly. They reduce cognitive load so you have the energy to actively pursue those novel experiences later in the day.
Okay, so the routine automates the boring stuff, but I still have to intentionally use the time and energy I saved.
Right. And the behavioral research points out a huge trap here. People generally overestimate what they can accomplish in a single day, but they massively underestimate what they can achieve in a year.
Oh, that is so true. We want instant results.
Right. Intentional habits let your efforts compound over a year, but you have to actually use that freed up time for something meaningful rather than just floating through the rest of the day.
Which brings us to a massive problem, I think. If we need to inject new experiences, we have to clear out the clutter first. How do we separate just being busy from actually being productive?
That's the million-dollar question, because culturally we treat those words as synonyms, but they're entirely different.
So how do we break the busyness addiction?
The psychologists in the source material suggest this really confronting perspective shift. They call it the deathbed test.
The deathbed test. Sounds intense.
It is. You imagine yourself at 90 years old, looking back on your life. From that vantage point, are you really going to care about that extra hour you spent clearing out your email inbox?
Definitely no.
Or are you going to care about the family dinner you skipped because you were chained to your desk?
Right. Zooming out like that instantly strips the trivial stuff of its power.
Exactly. And that leads to a pretty brutal prioritization exercise. You're supposed to write down absolutely everything you want to achieve right now.
Like every project, fitness goal, hobby.
Everything. Get it all out of your head onto a piece of paper. And then you force yourself to circle only your top 3.
Only 3? That's agonizing. If I have 20 things on my list, circling 3 feels like I'm abandoning parts of myself.
The discomfort is entirely the point, but the real pivot is how you treat the uncircled items.
Okay, what happens to the other 17?
Most people make them a weekend list or a when I have free time list. But the research says no. Those remaining items become your avoid at all costs list.
Avoid at all costs. Wow. You know, I look at that avoid list kind of like the junk food in my pantry.
How so?
Well, it's incredibly dangerous precisely because it's easily accessible and it feels satisfying in the moment, like checking off busy work or scrolling social media.
Yes.
It gives you that tiny dopamine hit so it feels productive.
Yeah.
But quietly, it's just stealing your attention from the big 3 things that actually matter.
That is exactly what the experts are warning about. Those secondary goals are the biggest threat to your remaining 30,000 days.
Because they're just distractions in disguise.
Right. Saying yes to everything is just a socially acceptable way to lose focus. It gives you the illusion of importance without ever making you move the needle on your core priorities.
Okay, so let's say our focus is protected. We've locked in our top 3 and we're ignoring the junk food. We still have the daily maintenance of our lives, right?
Right. Our bodies, relationships, careers.
Yeah, and how do we handle all that without it just becoming another exhausting to-do list?
The solution is scaling down dramatically. The goal is small, compounding daily improvements.
Small improvements. Give me an example, like with physical health.
Well, most people view health through this long-term preventative lens, right? Dieting now so you don't get sick in 30 years.
Yeah, which is super hard to stay motivated for.
Exactly. But the cognitive studies reframe health completely. You should measure your health by your quality of energy right now, today.
Okay, so prioritizing how I feel today.
Right, because 8 highly energized, focused hours are vastly superior to 12 exhausted, foggy ones.
100%. And I'm guessing sleep is a huge part of that energy quality.
It is the absolute biological foundation. We've treated sleep as a negotiable luxury for decades, but lack of sleep actively deteriorates your prefrontal cortex.
That's the part that handles impulse control, right?
Exactly. Complex decision-making and impulse control. Significant sleep deprivation actually mirrors the cognitive impairment of being legally drunk.
Oh, wow. Which perfectly explains the tension between what I call morning me and evening me.
I love that. Tell me about morning you.
So morning me is this disciplined visionary, right? Wakes up, writes a massive, ambitious to-do list. But evening me is a sleep-deprived gremlin who just wants to eat chips and binge-watch TV.
Yes. Because evening you has impaired impulse control.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
how do we design our daily improvements so evening us doesn't just constantly sabotage everything morning us planned?
You have to lower the barrier to entry so drastically that even the gremlin can't justify skipping it.
Okay, so no 1 hour grueling gym sessions after work.
Exactly. You program micro workouts, 10 push-ups before you shower, a quick walk around the block, 5 minutes of stretching while the TV is actually on.
Wait, really? Just 10 push-ups? Is that actually doing anything for my body?
It's not about building huge muscles. It's about changing your neurochemistry. A quick burst of exertion spikes your heart rate, which flushes stagnant cortisol out of your bloodstream.
Cortisol is the stress hormone, right?
Yes. And it also gives you an immediate dopamine reset. You're using a physiological trigger to create instant mental clarity.
Oh, I see. It's like keeping the engine idling smoothly instead of letting it stall out completely.
Exactly. It's a tiny win that builds huge momentum over time.
That makes total sense. And that concept of small, consistent maintenance that applies perfectly to what the sociological data says about relationships, right?
It really does. We usually think maintaining relationships requires these grand, exhausting gestures, but they are sustained entirely by micro interactions.
Its source material used a really good analogy here, treating relationships like bank accounts, right?
Yeah, or like keeping a campfire burning. You can't just throw a massive log on the fire once a month and expect it to stay lit.
Right, you need to constantly feed it small twigs every single day.
Exactly. And a small twig is just a text saying, thinking of you, or remembering a detail they told you last week. Those are deposits in the bank account.
And what's a withdrawal?
Always being late or only reaching out when you need a favor, that's essentially bankrupting the account or dumping water on the campfire.
That's so true. But the research also talked about the different kinds of relationships we maintain. There was this fascinating dynamic between close friends and what they called weak ties.
Yes, the hidden value of weak ties. Your close friends, the roaring fires, are your comfort zone. They provide emotional support. But your weak ties, like acquaintances, former coworkers, the barista you chat with, they are your bridges to new opportunities.
Because my close friends and I basically know the same people and see the same information.
Right. But your weak ties operate in entirely different networks. They have access to different ideas, different job openings, different worldviews.
So keeping those small, consistent interactions going with acquaintances is actually the best way to expand your opportunities.
Exactly. And speaking of opportunities, the career advice in these studies totally flips the old script.
Yeah, forget the corporate ladder.
Right. The ladder implies a linear, predictable upward path. But careers now are much more like jungle gyms.
I love the jungle gym concept.
Yeah.
You're building this unique, irreplaceable skill set by moving sideways or even backwards sometimes.
Exactly. A linear path makes you highly specialized, but very vulnerable to disruption. Taking a sideways move into a new department lets you acquire overlapping skills.
And one of my favorite concepts from this section was productive procrastination.
Oh, yes. Explain how you see that one.
Well, normally, if I'm avoiding some soul-crushing spreadsheet, my instinct is just to doom scroll.
Right.
But if you channel that avoidance into, like, learning a new software tool or researching a random interest, you're actually adding to your skill set.
Exactly. You're using the avoidance energy for growth. And whatever you naturally gravitate toward when you're procrastinating usually reveals what you actually care about.
Right. And to accelerate learning those new skills, the studies pointed to something called the teacher effect.
Yes. The absolute fastest way to encode a new concept in your own brain is to attempt to teach it to someone else.
Which feels so counterintuitive. We always assume we have to be the ultimate expert before we're allowed to teach anyone.
But the research suggests your current struggle with the material makes you a much better teacher than the world-renowned expert.
Because the expert has the curse of knowledge. They've forgotten what it feels like to be confused by the basics.
Exactly. If you're just one chapter ahead of the person you're teaching, you still remember the hurdles. It forces you to simplify it, which locks it into your own memory permanently.
Okay, so we've got our micro workouts, our relationship campfires, and our career jungle gyms. But there's a huge caveat to all of this, right?
Yes, a massive one.
Because all these great daily habits can be instantly vaporized by a failure in our internal state. Like sudden stress or a conflict at work just derails the whole week.
And that brings us to mastering the internal game. The neurological rule for this is incredible. It's called the 90-second rule.
This honestly blew my mind when I read it.
It fundamentally changes how you experience your own emotions. When you get triggered by something, your brain dumps a cocktail of neurochemicals into your bloodstream.
These are the chemicals that make us feel intense anger or fear or jealousy.
Right. But here's the catch. The biological lifespan of those chemicals in your body is exactly 90 seconds.
Wait, less than 2 minutes. That's the entire physical event.
Yes. After that 90-second window closes, the initial chemicals have been completely flushed from your system.
So if I'm still raging or panicking,
Yeah.
like 20 minutes later.
It's because you are actively choosing to stay in that emotion. You are cognitively looping the thoughts, which re-triggers the brain to release a fresh batch of chemicals.
Wow. I picture this like getting hit by a massive wave at the beach.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, because you can't control the ocean, right?
Yeah.
You can't control the initial impact of the water knocking you over. That chemical dump is going to happen.
Right, the hit is inevitable.
But once that specific wave passes, you have total control over whether you stand back up or whether you choose to stay underwater and drown in the residual current.
That is a perfect analogy. And mastering that 90-second window prevents us from making permanent, damaging decisions based on temporary chemical reactions.
Because emotional regulation is actually more valuable than just raw intelligence, isn't it?
Ultimately, yes. The person who can weather that 90-second wave without firing off a toxic email is the one who gets promoted. The partner who can breathe through it before yelling is the one who keeps their relationship intact.
And this connects perfectly to why we avoid difficult conversations.
Yes, exactly. Explain how you connected those.
Well, if we don't trust our ability to regulate that 90-second chemical wave, we just dodge the hard talk entirely because we're terrified of triggering the reaction.
Right. But dodging those necessary conversations acts like reverse compound interest.
The emotional deck just grows bigger and more toxic every single day you put it off.
Exactly. You have to endure the short-term friction of the 90-second wave to avoid the long-term suffering of that compounding debt.
Okay, so if we can regulate our emotions and maintain our daily micro-habits, what is the ultimate overarching goal we are actually building toward?
We are building toward intentional life design. Life isn't something that just happens to you. It's a portfolio you actively design.
A mix of experiences, skills, relationships.
Right. But to do that, you have to challenge society's default metrics for success, because most people optimize purely for money and status, especially in their 20s.
Yeah, and the psychological data highlights a huge paradox there. Making more money can actually make you poorer in time.
It's the hedonic treadmill, or lifestyle inflation.
Right. You get a bigger salary, so you buy the bigger house, which means higher taxes and a longer commute.
And suddenly your massive salary is entirely consumed just maintaining this baseline of possessions. You're working more hours to stay in the exact same place financially.
Which brings up the ultimate question from the source material. Would you rather make $100,000 a year working 80 hours a week or $70,000 working 30 hours?
When you factor in the sleep deprivation, the stress, and the commute of the 80-hour week, the person making $70,000 is vastly richer.
Because time is the true wealth. You can always print more money. You cannot add more sand to the dot of that hourglass.
Exactly. And a great financial habit that aligns with this is buying experiences instead of objects.
Oh, because objects depreciate instantly.
Right. The luxury car loses value the second you drive it. But experiences like a trip or learning to surf, they appreciate. They become better memories over time.
You really have to write your own metrics for success, whether that's mastering a skill or just being home for dinner every night.
Yes.
But I want to ask a really practical question for the listener. If someone is stuck right now in like career quicksand, a comfortable job they've outgrown, how do they actually start this life redesign without blowing up their entire life tomorrow?
The core advice is very clear. You do not need a massive overhaul. Massive overhauls just trigger the brain's threat response and lead to burnout.
So what do they do?
You change your life by changing one small thing for just 5 minutes today.
Just 5 minutes. Like reading one page of a book or sending one text to a weak tie?
Exactly. Test that micro variable. See how it changes your energy, refine it, and repeat it.
And the experts highly recommend doing monthly reviews, right?
Yes. Sit down once a month and review what energized you and what drained you. Monthly reviews are how you prevent yearly regrets.
That is so powerful. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, but I want to bring this deep dive full circle back to the math of the 30,000 days.
Right. It all comes back to how you're spending whatever time you have left. You are the architect.
Exactly. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to ponder after the episode ends.
Let's hear it.
Imagine that a biography was going to be written about you, but the author was strictly limited to observing how you spent your last 30 days.
Wow. Only the last 30 days.
Right. Based only on those days, would the author conclude that you were living by your own metrics or by someone else's?
That is a question that will definitely stick with you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Start testing those micro habits, guard your focus, and make your next days count.